Good afternoon, everyone. I call this meeting to order of the Minnesota Senate Transportation Committee. Today is Wednesday, April 8th. The time is 3:06, and we are in room 1100 of the Minnesota Senate building. In accordance with the rules of the Senate, the following members are remote. I believe just Senator Jim Carlson, who is calling in from Eagan. Is there anybody else online? I don't see anybody. All right, so today we're going to focus on e-bikes. We have a series of bills before us, but we will begin with a presentation of the electrical assisted bicycle. Oh, I was supposed to say we have a quorum. We have a quorum. We'll begin with a presentation of the electrical assisted bicycle youth operations study, which includes a slide presentation, and Jen Witt, I believe, is our presenter. We also have Mike Hansen, Hannah Pritchard, and Mitch Kaufman, if you would like to come up and sit at the presentation table. And I believe, it looks like from my notes that we will start with Jen Witt. Is that correct, Senator Dibble? Looks like it. All right, so thank you. When it's your turn to testify or to provide your testimony, you can introduce yourself, but I believe we'll start with Ms. Witt, who is online.
No, I'm ready.
Where?
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Hannah's going to take it.
Sorry, I've just been told we're starting with Mike Hansen. Sorry about that. I have new notes. So, Mr. Hansen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Madam Chair, members, my name is Mike Hansen, and I have the privilege of serving as the Director for the Department of Public Safety's Office of Traffic Safety. And with that, I would just enter for the record that this was a partnership with our friends at MnDOT, working on what is turning out to be a rather hot topic, e-bikes and everything surrounding them. And with that, I would just turn it over to MnDOT for the presentation on it. You guys did the lion's share of the work, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for having me today. Hannah Pritchard, I am an engineer with MnDOT's Office of Transit and Active Transportation. So I'll go through, first of all, a summary of the legislative requirement. So in 2024, we were asked to conduct a study related to youth and e-bikes. A couple of bullet points here with respect to what the enabling legislation stated. So identifying safety challenges, evaluating legal authority to reduce modifications to e-bike motors, recommending changes to state law, and developing educational and public awareness resources. So like Mike mentioned, we worked with DPS on this, and also the Advisory Council for Traffic Safety and the Active Transportation Advisory Council. Okay, so as Mike mentioned, e-bikes are a new and hot topic, and so it's important to make sure that everyone's on the same page with respect to what is an e-bike. So electric assisted bicycle, according to Minnesota statute, means a bicycle with 2 or 3 wheels that has fully operational pedals, a motor of not more than 750 watts, and speed that can be classified into class 1, 2, or 3. And the simplified version of this is that if you're trying to identify an e-bike, you should look for pedals, power, and speed. So, more on what is an e-bike. With respect to speed, Minnesota uses a 3-class system. Class 1, pedal assist up to 20 miles an hour. Class 2, pedal assist and throttle. And then class 3 up to 28 miles an hour. I should note that the maximum speed for e-assist is 28 miles an hour, but an e-bike can travel faster than that. For example, if you're going downhill, the e-assist shuts off at 28. The other thing to note is that you're not required to ride the bike at 20 or 28 miles an hour. A lot of people use the e-assist to make a 12 to 15 mile an hour ride a little bit easier. That's sort of how I use mine. If you see something that looks like an e-bike that's going 40 or 50 miles an hour, that is not an e-bike. That is something else, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Ms. Pritchard?
Yes.
Hannah? Could you just go back to that last slide? This is really confusing for me specifically. I'm guessing it may be confusing for others. So do any committee members have any questions about this, or do you need a little bit more time to digest the slide? So it looks to me like these are e-bikes, not e-motos, e-bikes. Class 1 does have working pedals, and it goes up to 20. Class 2 does have working pedals, but also it can operate without the pedals? Is that what the throttle means?
Yeah, so the throttle can give you a little bit of extra boost, but then those are capped at 20 miles an hour.
So Class 1 and Class 3 do not have a throttle?
That's correct.
Okay, and then Class 3 is like a Class 1, it just goes faster.
Correct.
Is everybody clear on that?
So the
Yeah, I
the
know.
classes are kind of arbitrary, in my opinion. Anybody can go either 20 or 28 miles an hour, or if you're going downhill, it can go 30. So, okay, thank you. Okay. So what is legal today for e-bikes? Generally speaking, within Minnesota law, e-bikes are treated like conventional bikes. So anywhere a conventional bike can be operated, an e-bike can be operated. We have legislation that says that a person under 15 must not operate an e-assisted bicycle. It is also illegal to modify an e-bike motor to increase the power or speed. So one of the questions from the 2024 legislation was, what is the legislative authority to limit modifications to the motors? And the good news is we already have that legislation. Okay. So the study itself, I'll talk a little bit about the approach and then also what we found. E-bikes, as you know, are an emerging technology with a lot of unknowns, and at MnDOT, our top priority is to keep people safe, and that means people using e-bikes as well as people sharing the shared use paths and trails with the people using the bikes. We know that when younger riders are on bikes that weigh more and travel faster, crashes can be more severe. That's just sort of how physics work. And that can exacerbate some existing unsafe behavior. So we know also when people encounter new technology that they need additional support with respect to how to use them safely. And the risks of e-bikes should be weighed against the risks of other modes of travel. Youths using an e-bike may, if without the e-bike, have chosen a different method of travel, which would have different risks associated with it. So to give an overview of the questions that were asked as part of the study, we wanted to know how youth in Minnesota are using e-bikes, what are the opportunities for youth to use the e-bikes safely, and then also some of the benefits and opportunities, and how do e-bikes fit within the scope of the existing state programs for youth travel, such as our Safe Routes to School program. So approach to the study, assessment of safety issues and concerns, a very thorough literature review, as well as stakeholder meetings and interviews, a review of the current policy landscape, and then we developed some recommendations as well as some education and awareness materials, and the summary report of the study is available on MnDOT's Legislative Studies website. I think it's about 30 pages, so it's a good read. What we found that youth e-bike usage is growing, which makes sense. E-bike usage is growing across every demographic, and e-bikes offer real opportunities and benefits to youth. We don't want to lose track of those opportunities and benefits as we talk about the safety risks and affordability challenges that also come with them. So, you know, one of the things that we found is a lack of information about what is and isn't an e-bike, and also how to operate them safely. So the opportunities for e-bikes, the opportunities that e-bikes present to youth are very similar to the opportunities presented by conventional bikes, greater access to school and jobs, the opportunity to replace short trips and improve transit access. I think that the largest difference between e-bikes and conventional bikes is that e-bikes are provide more inclusive access to active transportation than a conventional bike. So for people who have a physical limitation or stamina issue, an e-bike can help make that trip more possible and a little bit less effort. Okay. All right, sorry about that. So with respect to the risks and challenges, so those were some of the opportunities. I mentioned the basic physics of it. An e-bike weighs more than a conventional bike typically and is capable of faster speeds. And so in the event of a crash, the crash could be more severe as a result. It can exacerbate existing unsafe behavior. So we are talking about people in the 15 to 18-year-old demographic, and risk-taking behavior is a real factor. So recognizing that that is part of the challenge. So one of the other challenges is actually access to reliable, high-quality e-bikes. There are a lot of different type of motorized vehicles with two wheels that may or may not be an e-bike. It may be something called an e-moto, or it could be an e-bike that is just a lower quality, and so risks related to equipment failure or battery fires, that kind of thing, could be an issue. There's a picture here on this slide. The bike on the top is an e-bike, and the bike on the bottom is not an e-bike. That is what we've been calling an e-moto, which is a different type of vehicle that is also available, and consumers may not necessarily understand the difference between a legal e-bike and an illegal e-moto. The picture here gives you a pretty clear idea what each of those are, but it is hard to tell an e-bike from a conventional bike, and it is hard to tell an e-moto from an e-bike as well. So, additional education with respect to what people are actually buying at the point of sale is going to be really important here.
Ms. Pritchard, is that picture at the bottom not an e-bike because it doesn't have pedals? What makes it not an e-bike?
Yeah. Yes, I believe that is sort of the defining feature in this particular image. Yeah.
Senator Lang.
All right, I'm probably going to add to the confusion here. Thank you, Madam Chair. The e-moto in the bottom, what if it only does 28 miles an hour? Is it still a classified just because it doesn't have pedals?
Ms. Pritchard?
Because and that's going to lead into another question about age limitations, and if a kid rode that one to school versus the top one when it didn't have pedals, but it was still 20 miles an hour, whatever it may be, it gets real confusing real quick about what's legal and what's not.
Good question. Ms. Pritchard, do you have an answer?
Yeah, my understanding is that it is the lack of pedals is what, because an e-bike has pedals, operable pedals, and then also limitations on the amount of power and the speed. I guess I might ask, Mitch here did most of the work on the study. E-motos generally tend to go faster than in e-bikes. They don't necessarily have the top.
So Mitch Kaufman, could you introduce yourself before you answer?
Yes, Mitch Kaufman, Principal Planner with Tool Design, helped MnDOT develop this report. So to answer, to add some more information to this, the state does have a labeling requirement for e-bikes. So it has to have a Class 1, Class 2, or Class 3 label on it. So in addition to the pedals, there would need to be a label that identified as an e-bike.
My understanding, Mr. Kaufman, is that's a rule, but it's not uniformly enforced or implemented. So without the sticker or the label, I'm intrigued by Senator Lang's question. Is there an age restriction on e-motos or just on e-bikes?
There's really nothing related to e-motos in any of the current statutes. So, go ahead.
Looks like Mr. Hansen has an answer. Mr.
Madam
Hansen?
Chair, and there is some information out there. I don't think it's grounded in statute that has an age 16 requirement for e-moto usage if you can find someplace where you can ride it legally. As I understand it, they're just not classified in statute right now properly, so essentially they can't be operated on any type of a public right-of-way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to generally supportive of, improved safety measures, and as we've gone forward, the first thing we did when we were going through the bill earlier is we pulled up Amazon. What can you buy on Amazon? What does things look like? how fast do they go? And they usually, well, the one we pulled up looked just like the bottom one. It said it did 8 miles an hour. So now I'm like, well, I think a 10-year-old kid would probably be fine on that. I don't know, you know, or 8 miles an hour, yeah, whatever it said. I'm trying to remember. But the point of it is, it's like, are we legislating opportunity away? Are we I'm just asking, putting it at the forefront.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Any feedback from any of the testifiers in response to Senator Lang's question? Mr. Hansen?
Well, as a grandpa with 2 young grandsons who like motorized things, I can certainly sympathize with that. And this is where the difficulty comes in, because yes, some of them go 8 miles an hour, but there are some of them that are now being manufactured that will go 50, 60, even 70 miles an hour from at least the advertisements that come across a couple of the feeds that I follow. So, you know, identifying who can use them, what the safety equipment requirement is, what the maximum speeds are, and then how do we identify what this thing is when our officers are out there looking at these things. It's something we're actively working on right now. But that's part of the challenge with this emerging new tool for transportation.
Let's go to Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on Senator Lang, we were up in my office looking at this, searched them on Amazon, and they actually are advertised to ages 7 and up, and I think it was 8 miles per hour. And it looks just like the one on the bottom, obviously a little bit smaller, but they can get very small. So the regulations that we're putting, and again, maybe hampering what we're doing here is, you know, there used to be a little scooter when I was a kid. I had a little tiny one that looked battery powered, and it went probably 2 miles an hour. I don't know. It got me around the house, you know, as a kid. But is that addressed in this at all? As those 7 that's advertised at ages 7 up that are under 8? Is that anywhere in the restrictions we're going to talk about today, or is that not included in that? Because again, for a law enforcement official, I'm assuming it's difficult to identify what's what. And if there's one that's only, you know, for ages 7 and up, and it only goes less than 8 miles per hour, and it looks just like the one down below, how are we going to recognize that, enforce that? It just brings up a lot of complicated issues. So are the ones that are marketed to ages 7 up and under 8 miles per hour addressed anywhere in today's legislation is my question.
Testifiers, anybody?
Well, I guess I'm not terribly familiar with today's legislation. Mostly I'm just here to talk about the study. So.
The short answer is no, it's not. It's just you're looking at the 3 classes. I think there's actually a 4th class in there that has a couple of different caveats, but nothing related to what Senator Jasinski was commenting on there.
Yeah, Senator Jasinski, I would say most of what I've studied that we're going to talk about today relates to e-bikes and not e-motos. And I think that is a whole nother animal. Do you have another follow-up?
No, I thought we were going to talk about e-motos too. In one of the bills I think we looked at was e-motos as well, talking about that. So again, that brings in. And then the other one, and I can't remember what we classified them as, but you see a lot of these kids on the single wheel with the 2 pedals where you can basically lean forward and they go forward and back. It's not a Segway, but it looks really dangerous to me. It's like a 1 wheel. And is that classified in any of the discussion we're going to have today as well? And is that looked at in this whole discussion? I mean, this opens up so many different avenues to things that are being marketed on Amazon and across the spectrum of electric-assisted transportation, I guess is the best word to put it. So.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Jasinski. I think it's important to note that e-moto is not a statutory term, so we use what is the term? Yeah, I'm going to off to counsel here for a minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in statute, e-moto is not a term. There's the electric-assisted bicycles, which they're talking about, which have the pedals. And then the other one I think you're referring to in the legislation is motorized bicycle, which is it's a fairly narrow category, but they go not more than 30 miles per hour, and they can be electric or gas powered up to 50 cc's, so like a old Honda 50, or the sort of, it could be what is called an e-moto, up to 30 miles an hour. And then after that, there's not a specific category, but it would fit in the definition of motorcycle.
Senator Jasinski?
I think you got me more confused, but we'll continue on. So.
Yeah, I would like to clarify, because we do talk about motorized bicycles in some of the bills as well. But if anything, today, I think we will be making clear that there's more work to be done Senate, any other senator comments or questions before we continue? All right, back to you, testifiers.
Okay. It's interesting, we included these photos because it felt obvious which was which, and now we've just had a conversation about how it is in fact not obvious. So one of the big takeaways from the study is that public perception of the risks of e-bikes in particular is probably related to all of these other types of electric assisted conveyances, one wheels or e-motors or what have you. And so one of the recommendations that we have is related to education at the point of sale, so that people know what they're buying, because it was pretty clear from the stakeholder interviews that parents and caregivers who might be making the purchase on Amazon don't necessarily know if what they're buying is legal or not. It just looks kind of like what Johnny's mom bought him. So education and awareness ended up being one of the big recommendations from the study. So the recommendations can be broken down into a couple of different categories: education and awareness, reducing barriers, state programs, infrastructure, and of course data. From an education and awareness standpoint, so the study has a lot of recommendations. These are just some key ones that we wanted to pull out. So an e-bike awareness and education campaign, getting everybody on the same page with respect to what an e-bike is and also how to operate it safely. And then requiring businesses that sell something other than e-bikes to disclose at the point of sale that what they are selling is not an e-bike and may have different operating requirements. For barrier reduction, one of the things I mentioned as a potential safety issue is in addition to non-e-bike conveyances, there are also low-quality e-bikes that can be very attractive to purchase because they don't cost as much. And so if you get a low quality e-bike on the internet, then there's not a bike shop that can maintain it for you. And so that can also be a potential risk. So the e-bike rebate program from 2023 would be an opportunity to increase safety education and awareness as well, like through that program, but provide access to higher quality bikes. And then requiring jurisdictions to allow e-bikes on trails and facilities where conventional bikes are already allowed. People generally out for transportation don't recognize when they've crossed jurisdictional lines. I think e-bikes as they are defined in statute are essentially the same as conventional bikes, and so making sure that their use is consistently permitted around the state. With respect to state programs, one of the risks to e-bike riders is automobiles. And so upgrading state fleet purchasing standards to include some of our, some additional safety features like blind spot warnings and automatic braking and that kind of thing. E-bikes are faster than conventional bikes, and so drivers aren't necessarily expecting an e-bike rider where they might be expecting a conventional rider. Infrastructure, the challenges with respect to pedestrians and e-bikes sharing space, the answer is more space to give us a little bit more room to work with. And then it wouldn't be a good research study without saying that we need to do more research. And so the data available for this project was pretty limited. For example, we don't have any data on how many people are modifying e-bike motors to be something other than what was sold, because that is an illegal activity. So we don't have information about that. And I think one last thing that I kind of missed in here earlier that I just wanted to point out, with respect to people in this age range, this 15 to 18-year-old age range, making choices with respect to how they travel. E-bikes are heavier and faster than conventional bikes, but if they aren't traveling by e-bike, how are they traveling? And it is safer for them and for the general public if they are on an e-bike than if they are behind the wheel of an automobile. So just kind of keeping that larger risk environment in mind. So the picture here on this last slide, so Caroline was the project manager for this project, but she's out sick today, so I'm filling in, but that is her Class 1 e-bike that she rides all over town and has said repeatedly has significantly changed her, her mode of transportation on a pretty regular basis, so, thank you.
Thank you. Are either of you going to present, or are you just here for questions?
Madam Chair, members, I'm here for questions, and certainly happy to answer any that I'm capable of.
All right, Senator Nelson has a question, and then Senator Lang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, not a question exactly, but a suggestion. Something that I think would be very helpful would be a table that would show what a bike or an e-bike is, the other type of bike, I can't even remember.
E-moto, motorized bicycle.
E-moto, have a nice little picture of it. And then I think it's helpful also to see the speed, that type of thing. And I know a couple times when I've been, renting e-bikes and I go into the shop and, you hear all this and you hear about in miles per hour and such and the throttle. But I think it's important, and maybe it's just because I'm very much a visual learner, I think it could be really helpful to have a table that just showed the different names of the bikes, whatever parameters we have about them, miles per hour, maybe what they look like, what they have or they don't. Because I think it's really exciting, but I think it's a lot especially if you've got a grandchild with you and you're, doing all these things and you're trying to take all this in at the bike shop. I just think graph would be worth 1,000 words.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Madam Chair, and Senator Nelson, the good news is we have that. We've worked very hard with the Minnesota Safety Council, with Bike MN, and several of our partners on the advisory council to put together that exact one-pager you just described. And we've been distributing it far and wide. We did it prior to the Christmas buying season, knowing that many parents would be taking a look at those. And then we're refreshing that whole campaign again this spring as we get into that. And then part two of that is we've created, the one question I hear from our law enforcement liaisons and the officers I talk to out there is, how do I know what I'm looking at when I'm dealing with a kid or anything like that? So we've developed a palm card for officers to carry with them that will tell them how to identify what class is this, who can ride it, where they can ride it, and if it's even legal. And so that's going to be going out in the next couple weeks to our law enforcement partners, and they can hand those cards out to the parents that they're interacting with as well.
Thank you. Madam Chair?
Senator Nelson.
Just one follow-up. I'm hoping that you could send that to me. This is something that I think would be helpful in a newsletter for my constituents. It's just one more good piece of information that they could have. So I'll look forward to receiving both those things. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm going to jump on what Senator Nelson said just a little bit. And obviously, you got your work cut out for you when it comes to clarification on this, because, even us throwing little softballs your direction has been a little confusing. I think ultimately we could all get on board as we don't want a 13-year-old driving down the highway at 70 miles an hour. That makes sense, without a helmet on. That makes sense. It gets a little more complicated when we start talking about that same 13-year-old riding a bike or a small e-moto to school that's a couple blocks away. I don't really know where the line is going to be drawn on what is legal and what is not just yet. I guess that's why we're here today. But also, I don't know. It seems like we're very reactive to the technology. This is actually a pretty complicated issue when it comes down to it. I didn't see this coming. But then there was one thing you said a couple of times, that it's illegal to modify. You said that twice, I think. What exactly does that mean? That you can't? In my mind, it's if you buy a Class 1 and you take the pedals off of it and put a bigger motor in it, then it just becomes a different machine. I don't know why that would be illegal.
Mr. Hanson or Ms. Pritchard or Mr. Kaufman?
I'll take a stab at it and I'll let you guys bail me out. Because of the labeling requirement, that's the first layer of protection there. There are a number of aftermarket tuners, for lack of a better term. It's simply a plug and play where you can change the capabilities of that 750 watt motor upwards, and in some cases upwards significantly. So that bike, it might be labeled as a class 2 or a class 3, but it in fact now will go over 35 miles an hour, which means that it's no longer considered legal under the definitions of it. Okay.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason, that we were talking about that in particular is the enabling legislation for the study asked, what laws could be passed to prohibit that, and there already is a law that prohibits that, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Senator Lang?
I understand that is the one area where it was like, well, I know that they have packages to fix them up or do whatever. So I don't know, what legally speaking, you don't want to remove the mattress tag without penalty of law, so, but couldn't you possibly re-tag it and then it would be legal?
Ms. Pritchard?
I guess
Or anyone?
I have to get back to you on that.
So Madam Chair, so the current legislation does state that you can modify them, but you have to re-tag them.
Mr. Kaufman, I think, could you speak a little bit more into your microphone?
Sorry, yes. So you are able to re-tag them as long as it does fit within the legal definition of the e-bike or that class.
So if it was modified to go 50 miles an hour, then it wouldn't fit into a class,
That's
and so
correct.
then it wouldn't be able to be tagged. Yeah.
Is that clear? All right. Just as a reminder, if you could pull your microphone closer to you. Senator Jasinski has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up, Mr. Hanson. So you said, you were talking about the table that Senator Nelson referred to, and you said it's been distributed kind of far and wide, or it's going to be. If it's there, why don't we have it in front of us today? Because it would help a lot. I mean, wondering why we're not looking at that. That would maybe make it easier for some of us. But did you say it's going to be distributed widely, or it has been?
Mr. Hanson.
Madam Chair and Senator Jasinski, has been and will be, and I will get them to you.
Okay.
I will make that promise to you. We'll get that to you today or tomorrow for sure.
Right.
That's on me.
Thank you. No problem.
Senator Jasinski, anything else?
That's it. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't know if I misheard you there, so I thought you said it had been. I just thought we would have it in front of us if it's been distributed.
Yep.
Thanks.
It's very confusing. I have a question for Mr. Kaufman. You mentioned, and I knew from interacting with our legal counsel and our staff, that there already is a requirement for these e-bikes to be labeled. And my understanding is that there's a problem with that. I would like your comments on if indeed that's accurate, or if you have thoughts on how it could be implemented better, or what is the status of this labeling requirement? So that's for Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I can actually not speak to that. Yes, I can't speak to that because during this study, we did not find any indication or data about the actual tagging or the compliance with that legislation.
Mr. Hanson, do you have anything to add, or Hannah? Ms. Pritchard?
Madam Chair, I do not.
All right. It looks like Senator Carlson has a question online. Senator Carlson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sitting here and thinking about something that probably not a lot of the committee members have, let's say, experience with. I'm old enough to have been there when Honda didn't have a market in the U.S. And the way they got into the market was to have rent-a-Hondas. And I can't tell you some of the details about it, but it was during my, I'd say, junior and senior year in high school when I and my friends would go up to the cities and go on to Snelling Avenue where there was a Honda rental place. And you had to have a driver's license. You had to show that you had, at first, you didn't have to show anything. You could go up there, plunk down some money, and drive away in a rental Honda. But then as things got a little bit more sophisticated, you had to have a driver's license. And then later on, you had to have an automobile that had an insurance policy. And all of that added up. And pretty soon it became so unwieldy that they struck down the entire industry of Honda rentals. Some of you may remember the song that was written for Honda rentals. But I'm wondering, what is let's say the threshold where you reach, where you have to have insurance, where you have to have some kind of license or prior training, and also where the manufacturer or the supplier of these products has to provide insurance such that they're protected from wild drivers like me, who we used to go up to the Honda place with a pickup truck, throw a bunch of Hondas in the back of this pickup truck, and take them out to a park that we had out in Egan and Rosemont and ride them on the trails there. So there was a whole business that was defined a little bit differently than what we're defining now. But it did have the complications of prior training, of insurance, of safety, but they never did mandate helmets. And I'm wondering, where are we setting some of these lines, especially on requiring a prior, let's say, prior safety training, and also licensing these vehicles so that they can be accepted on the highway. They don't have to be forced to ride on sidewalks. So I'm interested in a bunch of answers that we haven't really gone across those. So any help that you could give me on that, I would appreciate it. But like I say, this was a whole industry, and that industry went away when I was about 18 years old. So some of you maybe don't even know that it ever existed, but it was the way we got Honda into the U.S. market in motorcycles and also automobiles.
Thank you, Senator Carlson. Testifiers, do you have anything to say about the licensing? I think Senator Carlson was talking about the licensing of the vehicles, but I'd be curious to know about the licensing of the vehicles, insurance requirements, or licensing of the drivers.
Yeah.
Do any of you have something to say about that?
Yeah, and I think I kind of want to go back to something that Senator Lang said about the analogy that's coming to me is throwing the baby out with the bathwater a little bit. You know, you might have something that looks really aggressive but only goes 8 miles an hour, or you might have something that looks very benign that goes 30 miles an hour. And like personally, I think that the power of the motor and the top speed of the vehicle is where we should be looking. I know the e-bike classes are confusing. You have the throttle, you have not the throttle. But you know, it's my opinion that there's probably a 30 or 35 mile an hour threshold where you have a thing that is not an e-bike that needs some sort of definition, that then perhaps using that vehicle, it's not unlike using a gas-powered motorcycle. So that's, yeah.
Any other feedback, Mr. Hansler, Mr. Kaufman?
Madam Chair, members, you know, and I'm reaching back here a bit, not quite as far as Senator Carlson, but when, you know, mopeds came around, that's the closest parallel that I can see to what we're talking about right now. And there were training requirements and there were age requirements that came along if somebody was going to operate those on a public right-of-way. And I think, you know, the speed and where they're operated certainly has to have some place in those discussions, but I think it, you know, we're dealing with a new frontier here, and this is going to take, I think, some deliberation and work to figure out what those thresholds are.
Thank you. Members, do you have any other questions? All right, well, Senator Dibble, I can hand the gavel back to you. Well, this is just for information, correct? So there's no further action required. All right, well, thank you very much for your information, and we'll look forward to getting the table that you promised on tape in front of camera.
All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Guys.
Welcome, Madam Co-Chair, or
Thank
Vice
you.
Chair. Senate, you're going to start with Senate File 3236, Senator Johnson Stewart.
Correct, yep. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is it okay if I get started?
Go ahead, go right ahead.
All right, so Senate File 3236 is a bill that requires helmets for operators of electric-assisted bikes under the age of 18. Again, keeping in mind the conversation we just had, this bill applies to operators of electric bicycles. So it would be those Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and not applying to motorized bicycles. As far as I know. So Danny Gillis, you're just going to have to jump in if I say anything wrong. All right. All right. This bill is something that I feel strongly about. There are quite a few areas of confusion around who can drive and who can't drive and the safety, and we just heard from the preparers of the report specifically stating that with increased weight, mass, and speed comes increased cause or chance of crash severity with these bicycles. So I think it's important that we consider this bill, which mandates the wearing of helmets. SF 3236 is supported by the League of Minnesota Cities following calls for action to improve e-bike and e-moto safety and enforcement from city officials that participate in the League's policy development process. E-bike helmet mandates are opposed by Bike MN, and I know I have several testifiers today, and were not specifically recommended in MnDOT's e-bike youth operations study. Using a helmet while cycling is associated with a 51% reduction in the odds of head injury and a 65% reduction in fatal head injury. I believe I have, are those amendments that we prepared, are they for this bill or are they for the next bill? They're for this bill. So we have several amendments, but I just wanted to talk briefly and then I don't know, Senator Dibble, should we have the amendments or should we have the testifiers first?
Senator Johnson Stewart, the amendments introduce substantially new ideas. And I'm not sure if the testifiers are here to testify to the underlying bill or to any of the ideas that are contained in the amendments. So if they're not here to testify to the substance of the amendments, I would say why don't we go with testimony first on the underlying bill?
Okay.
And then we'll take up the amendments because they're kind of somewhat new subjects to discuss. So.
All right. Well, then I would ask the testifiers to come up.
Great, thank you.
I didn't bring my note, that one paper that says who they are, so you'll have to
All
help me
right,
out.
so I have listed Brian Martinson. I have Sarah Branyan, who is not going to be speaking. Matt Moore from Bike MN, Christian Franzen from Bike MN, and Luke Van Satten, who will be testifying remotely. So why don't we call up Brian Martinson, and then we'll call up Matt Moore and Christian Franzen because they're representing the same organization. Thanks.
All right, so testifiers, just introduce yourself before you begin speaking.
Thank you, Chair Dibble, Vice Chair Johnson Stewart, Ranking Minority Member Jasinski, and the members of the committee. I'm Brian Martinson, and I'm speaking today as a resident of St. Paul. I also serve as the Bike, Walk, and Roll representative on Met Council's Transportation Advisory Board, a role which I have been in for the past 6 years. Should I proceed?
Yeah.
So I'm here to oppose the inclusion of a mandatory helmet provision for persons under age 18 in SF 3236. Having recently read the February 2026 report on the electric-assisted bicycle youth operations study commissioned by this committee, I note that mandatory helmet use was not among the 26 recommended actions to enhance e-bike safety and equitable mobility for youth. This is in part because enforcement of mandatory helmet use has not been shown to be effective for increasing rider safety through helmet use. What is more clear is that such mandatory helmet provisions give law enforcement officers a pretext to initiate a stop of someone that they suspect is either under age 18 or riding an illegal, unregistered electric motorcycle. And data are resoundingly clear that such pretextual stops lead to inequitable and often punitive regulatory actions. Such concerns have led both Hennepin and Ramsey counties in recent years to move away from allowing law enforcement to engage in pretextual traffic stops of motor vehicle drivers. It would be a mistake to now allow such stops for young riders of e-bikes. Therefore, I urge you to remove Clause F from Subdivision 6A of Section 1 of Statute Section 169-222. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. You can stay in case people have questions.
I'm happy to do
there's
so.
no
Thank
forum.
you, Mr. Martinson. Questions, members, for Mr. Martinson? All right, moving on to Matt Moore.
Thank you, Chair Dibble and senators on this committee. My name is Matt Moore. I'm here on behalf of the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. I also serve as policy counsel for People for Bikes. We're the organization that caused so much consternation a few minutes ago because we created the three-class system. I personally coined the term e-moto to refer to things that are not electric bicycles. And had a hand in drafting a bill, another bill we're considering today that does address these e-moto devices and motorized bicycles. With respect to Senate File 3236, the Bicycle Alliance is opposed to the bill. Like many state and national cycling advocacy organizations, the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota strongly recommends the use of helmets by cyclists and e-cyclists because they can prevent or reduce the severity of head and brain injuries in the event of a crash. But we are opposed to mandatory laws because of these proven unintended negative impacts of such laws. I will say personally, there's no greater advocate for wearing a helmet than myself, as it was the only reason I survived a 2014 crash with an SUV. Helmet advocacy organizations report that about half of the states have mandatory helmet laws, the most common approach being the requirement for all Class 3 e-cyclists to wear helmets, or for riders under the age of 16 to wear helmets. And that, again, was a feature of the three-class law that People for Bikes created. We wrote that into the law and was adopted by Minnesota in its current law. Currently in Minnesota, helmets are required for operators of motorized foot scooters. Those are those stand-on foot scooters with the tiny wheels, if they are under age 18. Operators and passengers of mopeds. Those are motorized devices that can travel up to 30 miles per hour, and those operators and passengers, if they're under 18, must wear a helmet. And then operators of off-highway motorcycles, gas powered dirt bikes who are under the age of 18. Both cyclists and e-cyclists are not required to wear helmets in Minnesota, and neither are operators of motorcycles, and I'm sure you've heard testimony from the motorcycle groups before about that when it's been proposed. So some states are considering helmet laws to address the increasing frequency of injuries related to e-bike use, and this is a real phenomenon, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. But the crash and injury data is trending negatively across the board for cyclists and pedestrians. They're less safe. Vulnerable road users are less safe due to higher speeds, larger and heavier vehicles, including EVs, and distracted and impaired driving. At the same time, the sale and use of illegal e-moto devices, the ones that you so readily can find on Amazon, has increased exponentially in these last 2 or 3 years. They've become extremely popular. A leading study, legislative study from California that was recently published, and some of my written testimony, shows an extensive summary and analysis of all available national and California-specific data. But it does show an increase in e-bike injuries, with the caveat that most of these devices that children are being injured on, that are sending them to emergency rooms, are not electric bicycles. They are probably e-motos because of the popularity. So while these trends are concerning, as my colleague pointed out, helmet requirements actually can reduce safety and perceived safety there's evidence that mandatory helmet laws discourage people from riding. If there are less riders, they get less attention from motorists, and more riders makes cycling per mile safer. And then, again, inequitable enforcement of helmet laws is a real issue. While bike helmets can be protective, bike helmets typically are not. And the one issue with this bill as a recovering personal injury lawyer, this bill lacks a key component of most other states' helmet laws. It does not preclude the use of evidence that a cyclist or e-cyclist was not wearing a helmet in litigation to recover for injuries that that person sustained. So even though the crash may not have been the e-cyclist's fault, evidence of their lack of helmet could be introduced and could prejudice their case. As you know, every time media reports a crash with a bicycle or an e-bike, they also report that whether the cyclist was wearing a helmet or not. They usually don't say that about the driver of a motor vehicle. It would actually protect their head as well in a crash. All right, so because this bill would burden operators of legal electric bicycles with potentially unequal enforcement, would not really address the e-moto issue, because a bill requiring helmets for e-bicycle riders would not cover riders of e-moto devices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moore. Questions, members? Senator Farnsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the testifiers. I'm a little confused because early in the testimony I heard you're a strong proponent of helmets because they keep people safe, and then later I heard we shouldn't force people to wear helmets because they don't actually work in keeping people safe. So which is it? Do they work to keep people safe, or do they not work to keep people safe?
They do. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Dibble and Senator. They do protect you in a crash. They do not prevent crashes from happening. Only safer infrastructure, penalties for inattentive driving or reckless driving, injuring a cyclist or e-cyclist, those could offer some more protection, reduce the number of injuries. But the helmet only comes into play when a crash happens.
Senator Farnsworth.
Senator Dibble.
Oh, Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was grateful that the testifiers submitted some of the information to me before the meeting, and I was able to do some research into their testimony itself. And I want to point out that this bill would require children ages 18 and younger to wear a helmet. I found no evidence that requiring children to wear a helmet would reduce their use of bikes at all. The data that I found was somewhat evident that it did impact an adult use of a bike. I think of my own children, and those children who I see riding e-bikes, and to be sure, motorized bicycles, and this does not address the whole spectrum of bicycles that we learned about in the MnDOT study. But I think about the number of children riding e-bikes in my community, and for sure, for many of them, it is their only mode of transportation. Remember that e-bike use is illegal for children under age 15. One of the concerns I have is, while I'm not a law enforcement officer, I see many people who I think for sure don't look like they're 15. And one of the issues I'm very concerned about is parents don't know that this law exists. And so requiring their children to wear a helmet would accomplish two things. It would tell them about the fact that they have to wear a helmet, but it would also help parents understand that riding an e-bike under the age of 15 is in fact against the law. And so while that's kind of a secondary benefit, I feel very strongly that this is a good move and something that will increase the safety of children riding e-bikes. So I did some additional research based on what I knew would be presented today, and I encourage us to think very positively about this bill.
Thank you. All right, I have Luke Van Santen queued up, who will testify by Zoom. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members. My name is Luke Van Santen. I'm a resident of Minnetonka in the West. Thank you for letting me speak here before you today. In addition to living in Minnetonka, I'm one of the co-founders of the West Metro Active Transportation Alliance, a group of people in the West Metro who are working to increase opportunities for our neighbors to have access to and be able to safely use methods of transportation other than or in addition to cars. I'm speaking to you today from my workplace in downtown Minneapolis, and I'm here today to ask that you not allow Senate Files 3236 or 3280, and I apologize if I'm speaking out of turn by mentioning that one already, to move beyond this committee or to become law. I'm asking this because it's already exceptionally hard for people to even consider doing normal, everyday things like getting to work or school or going out to dinner without using their car. Adding additional constraints like speed limits or helmet requirements, even when done with the best of intentions and for a very limited group, will make it just that much easier to go with the flow and hop in the car instead of taking the bike. As someone who greatly enjoys walking and biking to and in downtowns like Wayzata for meals, shopping, social connections, or sightseeing, I get and agree that people want to not feel harassed by other people using vehicles in an irresponsible manner. That's why we have laws like those referenced in the proposed legislation, and I hope we can use those more instead of adding new ones. To conclude, I'd like to say rather than limiting e-bike transport for everyone because of the actions of a few people illegally using e-motos, not e-bikes, we need to encourage the use of e-bikes and provide clear definition that distinguishes between the two so parents and youth can make appropriate and legal decisions, purchases, and uses, and so local units of government can more easily enforce existing laws. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you, members. Any questions for Mr. Van Santen? All right, thank you. Members, if it hasn't yet been pointed out, there is a letter, a couple of letters, one from the Bicycle Alliance, I think we've heard from them already in opposition, and then one in support from the League of Minnesota Cities. All right, so Mr. Franzen, you, looks like you're trying to get to the table to testify.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moore, you can take your seat.
Thank you.
Mr. Franzen.
Chair, members of the committee, my name is Christian Franzen. I represent the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. We share the same goal as the bill authors. More helmets, safer riding, fewer kids getting hurt. We require helmets on every organized ride we sponsor. We support free helmet distribution, and we want more young Minnesotans wearing them. The concerns from our city leaders and law enforcement about underage riders are legitimate, and we hear them too. Our question is whether mandatory enforcement is the most effective path to that outcome. Enforcement-based approaches to helmet use tend to produce more unintended consequences and less behavioral change than access and education programs. Helmet distribution through schools, point-of-sale education, and awareness campaigns are the kind of interventions that actually move behavior. Law enforcement already has the authority to act when they see dangerous riding. Existing laws on age limits, speed, sidewalk use, and yielding to pedestrians already provide grounds to initiate a stop. We believe those tools are adequate for the situations this bill is trying to address. We're committed to youth safety and committed to finding the approaches that work. We look forward to working more on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Franzen, members? All right. Moving on to Senator Johnson-Stewart, are you ready to start entertaining some amendments?
I am, Mr. Chair. So we have prepared some amendments. The core objective of this bill, 3236, is to address the issues of safety around the use of e-bikes. And so the First Amendment, A1, would create an e-bike safety coordinator position at the Department of Public Safety.
So Senator Johnson Stewart moves the A1 amendment. Senator Johnson Stewart, to the amendment.
All right, so do members have the A1?
Yeah, I believe all the amendments are in our package.
Okay, excellent. So the A1 would require the DPS to appoint an e-bike safety coordinator. This person would be charged with educating state and local law enforcement about the laws regarding e-bikes and similar devices or vehicles. It would assist state and local law enforcement in identifying and categorizing e-bikes and similar devices and vehicles. And it would develop and maintain a database of manufacturers of e-bikes and similar items and provide technical assistance to the investigation and enforcement of e-bike laws. Members, I think you will, well, I would assume you might agree with me that there's quite a bit of confusion around what these bikes are. I think this person could definitely fill a role in educating those purchasers of e-bikes and motorized bicycles. And I think this is an important first step in starting to get the word out about the rules that already exist, because frankly, there are quite a few statutes on the books already relating to e-bikes and motorized bicycles, and this person would serve as the coordinator. So I'd encourage the adoption of the A1.
So thank you, Senator Johnson Stewart. This is an excellent idea, and I like it a lot. It does trigger a fairly substantial fiscal implication. We don't quite yet have, a full awareness of what this might cost.
Correct.
So this would, if this does go on, it would necessitate a trip to finance. And in any case, it's more likely than not that the substance of these bills will be taken into when we do our markup next week on our larger bill. So this may or may not make the cut.
That's okay.
Just because, this is a substantial new initiative, basically adding a whole kind of department, an individual, and then staff as well. So, but it's a worthwhile conversation to consider. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess hanging around with you for the last 10 years gets us the same concerns, and I have those fiscal concerns as well. So I'd like to offer the A8 amendment to the A1 amendment.
Great.
Ooh.
Awesome. I love that.
And
I don't have
apologize, I
it,
did not
so
get
if
this
somebody
to you
could bring it up to me.
prior to the meeting, it was kind of a last minute idea in
Okay.
huddle, so I just wanted to make sure
We don't-
you knew
Wait,
that.
maybe I do have it.
No, it'll be distributed.
No, I don't have it. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, this moves the money back a year, so that's
All
good.
right. All right. Senator Jasinski to the A8.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What this does, we would take the money, obviously, we've been talking about leakages. I know people hate that word, but leakages out of the account. So what this would do, it would take the money from the active transportation account to fund this position. Again, we don't know the dollar amounts, but I think coming from the active transportation account would be the only, would be the fiscally responsible to take it from that account and be, open to that. So with that, I'd hope you would approve the A8 amendment.
Senator Johnson Stewart to the A8.
Yes, I think it's a good idea, and I would see this as a friendly amendment.
All right. All in favor of the, I'll just say my piece. I think it's creative and probably a good use for the active transportation account. Provisionally, I would want to talk to our friends who have an interest in the active transportation account, but provisionally it's a good start to the conversation of if we were to do this, how we would pay for it. So, anything further, members? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. All right, to the underlying A1 as amended. Anything further, members? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, members. I really appreciate the approval of that, and Senator Jasinski was a good addition. So the A2 amendment, which you have also in front of you, requires mandatory accident reporting for injury crashes involving an e-bike or a motorized bicycle. I think watching the presentation by MnDOT, it's clear that we need to get more data and start to understand if, in fact, the increased use of e-bikes or motorized bicycles is problematic, and where and how those problems or concerns might exist. So bike advocates and city officials, law enforcement, healthcare professionals have all expressed concerns about public safety and risk due to both legal and, frankly, illegal e-bike or e-moto operation. We know that there's limited information on the actual rate of crashes and harm from illegal bike use, e-bike or e-moto bike use. The A2 would require reporting of all crashes involving an e-bike or a motorized bicycle on Minnesota roadways, which would allow for analysis of this statewide crash data. So that, Mr. Chair, is the A2.
Great, thank you, Senator Johnson Stewart. Members, questions about the A2? All right. I think it's a good idea, too, and we heard testimony to that effect when the report was presented, as you mentioned, Senator Johnson Stewart. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just have one more amendment that I will offer, and then I believe there's a few others that are lingering in the committee. I would offer up the A5 amendment. The A5 also has some costs associated with it, but it requires, or it makes provisions for a public education campaign. So this would fund, with an undisclosed amount, a public information campaign by the Department of Public Safety to provide public education and awareness of e-bike and motorized bicycle safety issues. And I would consider this to go somewhat hand in hand with the A1 amendment, but it does stand alone as the A5.
So Senator Johnson Stewart offers the A5 and has explained it. Senator Jasinski, do you have an amendment to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I did not. I didn't actually think of this one, but if we could do, I don't know if I'm going to rely on council to do this, but if we could do this a verbal amendment to do the same language as the previous one to come from the active transportation account, I think would also make sense. And I apologize for not thinking of that earlier, but if we could do that or come back to that.
Why don't we set the A5 aside for a
Yeah.
moment and move on to any other amendments that.
Thank you.
Well,
That's it for me,
council work.
Senator, but I believe there's a few more.
All right. Members, Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the A3 amendment.
Senator McEwen offers the A3 amendment. Senator McEwen.
Thank you. So I was just made familiar with this amendment as we began our hearing today, but my looking at it and my understanding of it is that largely the A3 amendment is providing some language clarification to what is currently and we experienced some of this, I think, earlier in our hearing today. It's a very complicated web of definitions and descriptions. So the A3 is primarily focused on language clarification. And in addition, on page 3 at line 3.26 and 3.27, there is also a direction that a person must not operate a motorized bicycle on a bicycle path or shared use path at any time. So that is a substantive addition.
So thank you. Yes, members, my understanding of the A3 is that it's mostly kind of a cleanup and a clarification and making these confusing mix and mishmash of statutes a little more easy to read and understand with the one substantive change that you just mentioned. Maybe council can either validate that or help us understand the A3 a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's an accurate description of what this accomplishes, trying to put into more plain language what the existing law is, and then adding the substantive change to where they can be operated.
All right, thank you. I think we slay a few shalls, make them musts. You know, that's always fun to do, right? Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I at the risk of sounding repetitive here. Okay, so an e-moto is not a motorcycle. Is that correct?
But
a motorcycle can't-
E-moto doesn't really exist in statute.
Okay.
But I'm just going to let Mr. Watson respond to your questions.
But before you answer, Mr. Chair, thank you. But a motorcycle can be a bicycle, as long as it goes 30, not 28, but 30. You guys, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there, but, well, I'm saying that we have several different speeds that we're talking about here. It's still talking about electrically powered vehicle. It seems to me that we're making this more confusing than I think it needs to be. And I don't think that, I think we can adopt this amendment and be fine with it, because it does kind of comply with the scooter that we just talked about, the Department of Public Safety. That makes sense to me. I think we're,
Well, this one, if you walk through it, and maybe Mr. Watson can help us
yeah,
understand.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chair, thank you.
It does make the statutes a little easier to read. The area is inherently complicated. That is hard to solve, because there's so many different formulations of two-wheeled vehicles. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, and the two parts of it, is an e-moto a motorcycle? The definition in statute for motorcycle is very broad. I think absent some other definition for what that is, often you could classify it as a motorcycle, right? Because a motorcycle is every motor vehicle having a seat or saddle for the use of rider with not more than 3 wheels. So they would be. I think the clarification here at 110 is to, I think there was some confusion about what something was if it was not a motorized bicycle, which is a bicycle that can go up to 30. And above that, this says, well, now it's a motorcycle, even though it has pedals.
Clear as mud.
So speed is kind of the factor to focus on the most when we're talking
one more
about what
question,
is a
Mr. Chair.
motorcycle.
So if we were to amend into law the recommendations of the study group, would it be in this section?
Which recommendation?
Well, just the classifications, the speeds that we talked about earlier, the class 1, 2, 3, if that's not in statute, and which
so
it
that
probably should be.
Yeah, Senator Lang, that is in statute.
Oh.
The classifications are already in statute. We recognize an e-bike, class 1, class 2, class 3, with those elements that were set forth in the study. And then they are considered bicycles for all intents and purposes. They just happen to be electric assist bicycles. But once you get above
30,
the 28 miles per hour, up to the 30 miles per hour, and you can, just barrel down the path or the sidewalk or the road without pedaling. Go 30 miles an hour, and you're just moving along and not pedaling. That's a motorcycle.
as long as it's not 29.
Not 29, not 28.
I apologize, Mr. Chair.
All right, so back to the McEwen
A3.
A3. Any questions? Senator Farnsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm probably more confused than Senator Lang. Senator McEwen, I'm just wondering, so a person must not operate a motorized bicycle on a bicycle path or shared use. Somewhere else, you delineate the difference between, between motorized bicycles and electric assisted bicycles. And I did take a phone call early in committee, so the testifier might have already explained what the difference is. I'm just wondering, what is the difference between the motorized bicycles and the electric assisted bicycles?
Oh, no.
So that's an excellent question. Motorized bicycle, electric assist bicycle. That's a key question that we should answer if we're not yet clear on. Mr. Watson, motorized bicycle.
Mr. Chair, do we want Hannah to maybe answer
Sure,
that?
and Hannah can help us too.
Just say who you are again.
Yeah, Hannah Pritchard with MnDOT. I don't know. So my understanding is that motorized bicycles were a phenomenon in the 70s during the oil crisis, and they were bicycles with gas motors, and they were short-lived. And I am sort of amused that the motorized bicycle statute is coming up as part of this conversation, because I ran into it a couple years ago and thought, well, what in the world is this? And so that's my understanding, is that it is a sort of a legacy definition of like a dirt bike. So.
Okay, Mr. Watson, and what would you have to add to this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, strictly speaking, a motorized bicycle, that history sounds right, but it has to be a bicycle, so it has to have pedals, and it can go up to 30 miles per hour. And so I think what's very confusing is that certain classes of electric assist bikes, were they not carved out, would have previously been within the definition of motorized bicycle, if that makes sense. So just think of, it's a broader category. It's something that has pedals and can go up to 30 miles per hour. And there are specific rules for its operation. But then the definition does carve out now electric assist bikes. So if it falls within one of those categories, it's no longer a motorized bicycle.
That makes sense.
I don't know if there's a way to make it more, like, I don't know if I'm doing a bad job, but it's also a very confusing set of definitions.
Senator Jasinski.
I have a question. I'm sorry, this is probably going to come out of left field, but just thinking about this and thinking about biking and trails and things like that. So let's just say a state trail, Cicada Trail comes through my district. So on that trail, you can walk on it, you can jog on it, and you can use an e-bike on it, but you could not use anything other than that, correct? I think
Well, you could use a
there-
plain old bike, too.
Say it again?
A plain old bike.
And a plain old bike. And I think on some of them, you can actually snowmobile. They're multi-use for snowmobiles. Some are four-wheelers, not many anymore. It's more snowmobiles. But so anything other than that cannot be used. And we're not going to try and take away that from those trails. So on a state trail, like a Cicada Trail in my district, you'll still be able to use an e-bike, a pedal bike, and what's allowed now. We're not changing any of that. I just want to clarify that. Okay. That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, back to the A3. Question, anything further, members? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. All right, anything further, any further amendments? Oh, we can come back to the oral amendment to the A5.
That was on the A5.
Yeah. Mr. Watson.
The oral amendment, so Senator Jasinski moves an oral amendment to the A5 amendment on page 1, line 7, delete driver and vehicle services operating, and insert active transportation.
All right. And Senator Johnson Stewart, you're supportive?
I do.
All right, all in favor of that amendment from Senator Jasinski to the A5, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. To the A5, anything further? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. All right.
So now we're back to the A1? Or I mean to the, no, we're good.
Well, see if there's any further amendments to 3236. All right. Back to Senate File 3236 as amended. Senator Johnson Stewart.
Members, I just want to offer up something that's really been on my mind since I've been developing this bill and working with bike advocates. My husband and I are big boaters, and I was so grateful when the Minnesota legislature passed the rule that all children under the age of, I actually don't even know the law because we pretended it was 12, but I think the law actually is 10, that all children under the age of 10 had to wear a life jacket when they were on a boat at all times. We use that as the heavy-handed rule to keep our girls in life jackets anytime they stepped on our boat. I have had children who fought me every minute to wear a bike helmet, and frankly, speaking as a mom, I would very much appreciate the weight of the legislature behind me if, in fact, my kids, who are not 18 and under, but if I had kids that were, having the heavy hand of the law behind me to say, you must wear a helmet. I think parents will appreciate this. I think it is smart for us to do this. And with the addition of the outreach coordinator and the public safety officer and some of the other things that we've put into the amendment, I think we would be making good progress towards increasing the use of e-bikes for all children. The A7?
Mr. Will is bringing you the A7. I think you've had some conversation about it with council. It sets a standard for helmets that is used.
Yes, actually, yeah, I'm sorry about this, Senator Dibble. So I've just been handed the A7. Do members have the A7 in front of them?
They do not. So Senator Johnson Stewart will offer the A7, although Senator Johnson Stewart, it also removes the language around the fine on on lines 2.3 and 2.4.
Actually, I like that. So what this, somebody's going to have to help me because I forgot about this, or it was just handed in front of me.
Mr. Watson. You could
So,
understand
yeah,
the
Mr.
A7.
Watson, could you describe this? And I think it's an important effort to address some of the concerns from our first testifier who talked about unfair enforcement of the helmet law. So, Mr. Watson?
Mr. Watson.
So the A7 amendment, first it cleans up the reference to a helmet and uses what's used elsewhere in definition, which is a bicycle helmet that complies with the federal regulations for bicycle helmets. And then it deletes a reference to a specific fine for that violation. It would still be a violation under Chapter 169. It just wouldn't have this blank fine, which would need to be filled in.
And I think that's a good idea because my goal would be to help riders and their parents understand some of the rules and some of the safety risks around e-bike use. So removing the fine, I think, takes away some of the inequity.
Great. All right. Questions on the A7 members? Senator Farnsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering on other similar laws like the seatbelt law or the flotation device law that you mentioned, are there fines associated with those?
Mr. Watson, do
Senator
you know?
Johnson Stewart.
I'm asking counsel if he knows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so a violation under 169 would be a petty misdemeanor. It doesn't have a set fine. It has a maximum fine of, I think, $300 would be the maximum.
So when you say Chapter 169, just help the public
Oh,
and us
yes. Yeah,
what does that
understand what
mean?
you're talking about.
This is all within Chapter 169, which are violations like vehicle violations.
So does that mean that there is no fine, but you just get the citation?
Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There would be a fine with a petty misdemeanor.
But we just take out the specific
Senator
fine?
Johnson Stewart.
Sorry.
So, yeah, I think there's just like a general understanding when you're in violation of a requirement in this particular area. And I think it's actually generally true of state law. If there's a requirement to not do something or a prohibition on doing something, but the law is silent as to the nature of the violation, there's kind of a default violation. That's true throughout statute, and might be more specifically true in these vehicle statutes. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to add to that, with a blank fine, if you set it at a certain level, it would elevate it from a petty misdemeanor, and it would have to go to the Judiciary and Council. So that was one reason for that change.
Thank you.
I think Senator Farnsworth.
Senator Farnsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that answer. I guess it seems incongruent to me that we're saying that you have to wear a seatbelt. If you don't, there's a fine. And you have to wear a seatbelt because you will be safer and the public will be safer and everybody else in your car will be safer if you get into an accident. And if you're under the age of 10 or 12, you have to have a flotation device, and if you don't, there's a fine. But then, on the other hand, we're going to say you have to wear a helmet because it makes you safer if you get into an accident, but you don't have to have a fine. I mean, I'm not a big fan of fines, but it just kind of seems incongruent with other laws in regards to safety.
Senator Farnsworth, I think there is a fine. It's just not specifically spelled out and attached to this particular.
Yeah, I was wrong.
It holds for, if it's silent, it becomes a petty misdemeanor. And if there's a violation, there is a fine. So.
Okay, so basically everything about this bill is confusing me today. Thank you.
Senator Jasinski.
Mr. Chair, then, so again, that brings up my question. So what is the fine? I mean, it's tough to approve a bill if you don't know what the fine's going to be or an amendment. So if it is defaults to a petty misdemeanor, what is the fine if a 15-year-old gets caught without a helmet is what my question is.
We can find that out. It's in the law. Senator, Mr. Watson.
Mr. Watson.
So under the traffic regulations, chapter 169, which is where we are, a petty misdemeanor, it can be a fine of not more than $300. So it could be less.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Watson. So I'm going to have a difficult time voting for this just because we don't know what that is. I mean, it could be $289, it could be $25, it could be $10. It just seems confusing. I actually didn't come into the committee knowing how I was going to vote on this, but listening to the testifiers, I'm going to have a tough time with it. I think the recommendation, most parents are saying, hey, wear a helmet, those things, but to mandate that to me just seems a little excessive in this case. I like the safety issue, but I just think it's a little bit of a overreach, and we're creating fines that could be up to $300 for a 12-year-old riding a bike without a helmet. The cost of doing that, the administration of doing that, just the process to me seems a little overwhelming for a bike, so I'm not going to be in favor of it. I do appreciate you allowing the friendly amendments to get that on there to do make it better, but I just don't think I can vote for it, and I apologize, but I just don't think we can do this, so thank you.
Senator Johnson.
Mr. Chair, so even without the A7, though, there still is a fine. It's just that, so even if we don't adopt the A7, there is a fine involved. I just want everybody to be clear about that. Keeping in mind, I don't think we have an option of making something illegal without having a penalty associated with it. Do we, Mr. Watson?
Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think broadly speaking, that's true. There are different penalties. I think you could have an administrative citation, or you could set a specific fine at a lower dollar amount if that's what you wanted to do. But you would have to then explain what type of violation it is, if that makes sense.
Yep. All right. Thank you. All right. More.
Well, are we still on the
Last word has not been
A7?
spoken, because I think we'll.
Yeah, we got to move
Depending
on.
on what happens here today, we may see this again in, I don't know, a omnibus bill that might show up next week. So with that, Senator Johnson Stewart moves the A7. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. All right, so back to Senate File 3236 as amended. Senator Johnson Stewart moves Senate File 3236 be recommended to pass as amended and be referred to the Committee on Finance. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. All right. Senator Johnson Stewart, moving on quickly to your Senate File 3280.
Oh, my Lord. Thank you. Thank you, members. Well, if anything is clear, we have a lot of work to do around electric bicycles and motorized bicycles. This bill, 3280, has to do with speed limits. And so this bill, let me get to my notes here. I promised to be quick, Senator Dibble, so I apologize. SF 3280 would authorize local units of government to adopt a speed limit ordinance specific to e-assist bicycles in a business district in the local government's jurisdiction. The bill would authorize an administrative citation for a violation of a speed limit under the bill. So this proposal came to me from local government officials concerned about e-bike or e-moto use at high speeds through business districts in my community and frankly in other communities. particularly in areas with high levels of foot traffic. Minnesota speed limit laws currently do not have any specific provisions for different vehicle types. In addition, legal e-bike traffic regulations currently allow legal e-bikes to be used in the same manner and in the same settings as a standard bicycle. Minnesota cyclists, e-bike riders, and motorized bicycles or e-moto riders can be cited for speeding on public roadways in Minnesota. However, Minnesota law does not speak to an ability to set speed limits within bike lanes, bike routes, or shared use paths. So enforcement of speeding violations in those settings is unclear. So again, now we know what an electric assist bicycle is. This would allow for a local unit of government to set a speed limit for an e-bike in their own jurisdiction.
All right. Thank you. Questions at this point? All right, let's move to testimony. And I've lost my testifiers list. All right, so I have Matt Moore and then Luke Van Satten. All right, so first we'll call up Matt Moore, and then we'll go to Luke Van Satten, who's joining us remotely. You have to introduce yourself. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Chair Dibble and members of the committee. My name is Matt Moore. I'm here on behalf of the League of Minnesota, Bike Alliance of Minnesota, excuse me, they did change their name, Bike MN. Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota opposes this bill, which would authorize local municipalities to adopt speed limits specific to electric-assisted bicycles within a business district. The speed limits will be effective upon the erection of appropriate signs designating the speed and indicating the beginning and end of the segment on which the speed limit is established. The bill to us seems unworkable and treats riders of regular bicycles, plain old bicycles, differently than electric-assisted bicycle riders, even though they're very similar vehicles. It would also call out electric-assisted bicycles for special treatment when no other vehicles are treated that way. There is a well-reasoned approach of regulating vehicle traffic in a uniform manner across the entire state, so citizens have a reasonable expectation that laws will not vary widely in different jurisdictions, or that their legal duties will not change dramatically when crossing a municipal boundary, or in this case, the often invisible and unmarked boundary of a local business district. Apparently, a business district would be willing to put up signs at every entrance point to the business district, alerting electric bicyclists that there is a speed limit specifically applicable to them. But citizens should not expect that similar vehicles will be subject to different requirements. There's a speed limit for everyone. If passed, a cyclist riding a conventional bicycle could travel through a local business district at any speed, up to the posted speed for all motor vehicles, while their companion riding an electric bicycle would have to slow down to whatever speed limit was adopted by the municipality. Could be as low as 5 miles per hour. Now that might be reasonable if there were any data showing that electrical bicycle operation in a business district posed any greater risk to pedestrians, the operator, or conducting commerce in the business district than would bicycles, electric scooters, skateboards, segways, or other e-mobility devices. No such data exists. So without factual support and reliable data, the committee should hesitate to make new policy. There is definitely a concern with the unsafe operation of e-bikes, which we've explored at length. This bill would not apply to e-motos. They're not electric bicycles. They wouldn't address unsafe or too fast operation of e-motos at all, just legal electric bicycles. So rather than burden the many owners and operators of safe, legal electric bicycles with the prospect of a speeding ticket for riding faster than other lawful vehicles, through a business district, the committee should instead focus their attention and legislation on illegally operated electric motorcycles, motorized bicycles, which are also mopeds under Minnesota law, and electric dirt bikes, which don't belong on the roadway at all. That legislation is Senate File 4186. So the Bicycle Alliance urges the committee not to advance this legislation, which would burden law-abiding citizens without addressing the real issue of illegal e-moto use. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Questions, members? All right, Mr. Van Santen.
Luke communicated to me that he has stepped away. He gave his testimony as part of SF 3236.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Members, I'll just, again, call your attention to the letters in your packet in support of League of Minnesota Cities with some critique and opposition from the Bicycle Alliance. All right. Questions, debate, or amendments, members? All right.
Oh, there is an A1 amendment. I don't have it with me. I didn't bring it up. So if somebody could offer it. It has to do with dates.
All right. So Senator Johnson Stewart offers the A1. Is that in our packets?
I believe it's at our tables, and I came up here without bringing it
should
with
be
me.
at your place.
Yeah. So the A1 just deletes all references to 2025 and updates it back to 2026. It's a technical amendment.
Great. This author's amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. Mr. Moore, did you have anything further?
No, thank you, Chair.
All right, you can take your seat. All right. Questions, debate, amendments? Members? All right.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Jasinski.
just a comment, and I love local control. You know, being a mayor, I understand the concern in the cities, but I think it also does the practical aspects of it, of signing and those things that do get cumbersome where you're enforcing it. The number of signs, where you're coming in, where you're going out, seems confusing to me and maybe cumbersome for some cities. It would be my concern.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with Senator Jasinski. I think there's some logistics to work through.
And some of this is going to state and local. They maybe can work some of that out there as well. All right, anything further? All right, so Senator Johnson Stewart moves Senate File 3280 as amended be recommended to pass and be referred to the Committee on State and Local Government. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you, Senator
Thank you,
Johnson
members. Sorry to take so much time.
All right. It's okay. We still got 15 minutes left. We can go through the Coleman bill, and I think, is Senator Abler here? He's on his way. All right, Senator Abler is on his way to present Senator Coleman's bill, Senate File 4186. We will be in recess until Senator Abler joins us. Bill is coming at the request of the Minnesota Management and Budget Department, and it has to do with the change that we made a few years ago to forecast the amount of funds needed to fulfill our federally mandated metro mobility service requirements. And so that's about the extent of what I understand, and I asked Ms. Boyd to help us understand a little bit better Senate File 4986.
Sure, Mr. Chair, this is this has to do with the metro mobility. Several years ago, a law was enacted that required that in each forecast MMB include a state obligation from the general fund for the net costs of implementing metro mobility. It makes it a forecasted program similar to programs in the E12 and HHS budgets. The forecasted funding amount was first effective for fiscal year 26, so that level of funding was in the budget enacted last year, the biennial budget. This session is the first time there are necessary forecast adjustments to those, to already enacted appropriation amounts. So the increases as per the February forecast would be about 8.9 million in fiscal year '26 and 10.9 million in fiscal year '27. These amounts were already included in the February forecast, so this appropriation increase does not have a cost against the forecast and does not affect the projected bottom line.
Thanks. Are there questions about that, members? Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ms. Boyd. So the numbers, again, I just saw the percentages and it seems high to me. Is that, what's the number it's just what's that number based on the increase amount? Did you say that? I'm sorry. I think you said it's 7.8% and then 9.1%. Seems kind of like a high number to me when we're increasing. So just where do the numbers come from? What are they tied to?
Ms. Boyd. And also we have folks from the Met Council here who can help us understand how they arrive at the forecasted anticipated amount that would be needed by Metro Mobility. Probably has to do with inflation and increasing numbers of seniors, et cetera. But Ms. Boyd, maybe.
Mr. Chair and members, yeah, the increase was 8.9 and 10.9 million, and the percentage increase from what was already enacted was 7.8 and 9.1 per year percent. And the factors that go into these forecasted amounts is set in statute. It's generally the net costs necessary to maintain service levels for expected demand, maintain the general existing condition of the fleet, and meet any other requirements under the statute for Metro Mobility. Also includes any projected forecast adjustments as in here, and subtracts any funds identified from non-state sources such as federal or FAIRS, et cetera. So anything specific to these increases, I would invite Metropolitan Council to comment on.
Great, thank you. Would you like to hear from Metro Council?
I don't need to. It just seems high. I mean, we're seeing everything going up. People, property taxes are going. Just everything is so high. It's just starting to get a little frustrating.
Right. So, members, it doesn't exempt us, of course, from appropriating these dollars, but it does get us out of the circumstance that we found ourselves in years past, in which the Transportation Committee would be given, its general fund target, and we'd have to pay for that increase to Metro Mobility out of our target. It's already accounted for in the overall budget forecast. We still have to appropriate those dollars, but it doesn't count towards what we would have available to us to prioritize for general fund purposes. So it's a good thing. So it's not put in Metro Mobility increases, which we have to do, then aren't put in competition with some of the other things that are important as well. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You might have spoke to this, and maybe I just didn't catch it. Where is the money coming from? I see the increase in both total appropriations and special transportation service. I just don't know where the increased funds are coming from. Where are they coming from?
Thank you. Senator Nelson, excellent question. These are general fund dollars. So it's coming from the bottom line, if you will. It's accounted for, not actually the bottom line. I misspeak. The bottom line is something quite specific. These are dollars that are already reflected in our forecast. Okay. And so it's not like money that is coming from someone's target or someone's already eyeballed. It's already been, when you look at the forecast and projected deficit, projected surplus, that's not counted in for example, that surplus. It's kind of accounted for in what is anticipated to already be being spent.
So just to follow up then, so the amount that was originally, that's now struck out, was in the forecast, and then the additional amount, which is, it looks like it's about 10 million roughly, is that coming from the general fund? So we're just talking about the $10 million that is over and above what was forecasted in the budget?
Does that question make sense, Ms. Boyd?
The bill, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair and Senator Nelson, the bill is appropriating the last enacted budget bill. So the crossed out numbers are what were appropriated from the general fund for Metro Mobility, and the new numbers would represent the forecasted amounts to pay for the actual service. So it's already in the forecast. This isn't new spending. Well, it is new spending, but it's already in the forecast. It's not coming off the bottom line. It's just to enable the legal authority to spend the money.
Thank you. I understand, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you. All right. All right. So I move Senate File 4978 be recommended to pass and be referred to the Committee on Finance. What did I say? Oh, excuse me, I move that Senate file number 4968 be recommended to pass and be referred to the Committee on Finance. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. All right. Welcome, Senator Abler. Bring us home, Senator Abler.
Well, it's somehow appropriate. It's about e-bikes again. It's e-bike day, and I suspected even more cameras here, Mr. Chair, for this bill. This bill is probably the highlight of your day. And I don't know how your day has been, but it's certainly the highlight of my day. I get to come back here again and talk about e-bikes again. And so Senator Coleman is indisposed, and so I've got the privilege as a co-author to take on this bill. Pretty much the whole point of this bill is that e-bikes are not motorcycles. So those are my opening comments, and I have somebody who can offer some more content to the bill, but just remember, they're not motorcycles. Thank you.
We've had a lot of conversation about what they are and what they are not. And we never really did figure out what motorcycles are, so that's... All right, Mr. Franzen, please proceed.
Again, my name is Christian Franzen. I'm here on behalf of Bike MN. I'm going to go over the bill here. There are numerous issues and concerns with the new fast and powerful e-motos, not to be conflated with the Minnesota's 3-class electric assist bikes, or e-bikes. This helps to clarify the requirements for devices that are too fast and or too powerful to be treated as e-bikes and should be referred to as e-motos. The short version is e-motos are considered motor vehicles and should not be used on public roads unless they are registered, driven by a licensed driver, and follow all the rules of the road. Some of the concerns that led to this bill, there were problems with dangerous illegal behavior on streets, trails, and sidewalks, especially throttle devices that are much faster and more powerful than e-bikes. Unlicensed drivers operating motor vehicles, unregistered motor vehicles being illegally operated on public roads, problem with identifying specific classification of the device, problem knowing which traffic regulation should be applied to the given device, problems with consumers not knowing the vehicle's classification and application regulations. Those are just a few of those issues. What this bill does is it clarifies that a two-wheeled vehicle with handlebars and a saddle that exceeds 750 watts and or can exceed 20 miles an hour self-propelled meets the definition of an off-highway motorcycle and should be regulated as such. This requires point-of-sale registration for e-motos, consistent with the sales of other motor vehicles intended for the use of public roadways, allows off-highway motorcycles to be dual registered also as either motorized bicycles or motorcycle for the use of public roadways. There's clarification that motorized bicycle is a motor vehicle and operators must be licensed and insured if driving on a public roadway. It also amends the definition of micromobility device to exclude e-motos and other devices that exceed that 20 miles an hour self-propelled. And lastly, it addresses the issue of nonconformity with existing labeling and disclosure requirements by regulating sales. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Franzen? All right. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Chair Dibble. I'm really here to answer questions, and I have a list of them I wrote down before from prior deliberations. I'd be happy to briefly jump into those and maybe help clarify the status of things with the Chair's permission. Please. All right. So that device pictured in the presentation from MnDOT is called a Suron Light B. It might be a road legal device. It kind of looks like an electric bike. It is 21,000 watts and has a top speed of 50 miles per hour. It lacks pedals. It is sold as an off-road motorcycle. That's because it can't be sold as an on-road motorcycle. The manufacturer has not registered as a motor vehicle manufacturer with the federal government. They do not create a VIN for that device. But they sell it and promote it as being able to be used on public roads. That isn't the case anywhere in the United States. It is a motorcycle. It's sold ostensibly as a dirt bike. This is true of many of the e-moto devices that you see in your communities being operated by children. They are not street legal. They cannot be made street legal. Our definition in Minnesota of motorized bicycle also includes devices called mopeds. That's another historical device. It has pedals and a tiny gas motor. You know, you might have ridden around one in college, in the 80s. What we've done with the bill is change that definition to include kind of the next adjacent group of devices that have motors of more than 750 watts, less than 1,500 watts, still capped at 30 miles per hour. They were not clearly in there. They have uses, and they can be registered as a moped, provided they meet the other requirements, license, insurance in some cases. The labeling requirement, that is a manufacturer requirement. Again, that is something that the bicycle and the e-bike industry proposed to identify the different classes of electric bicycles for consumers, for law enforcement, and for trail management, where Class 1 electric mountain bikes are generally allowed, but other classes are not. A lot of the confusion about these categories of vehicle is actually created by the manufacturers. They put pedals on a motorcycle. You can get a motorcycle with pedals that goes 80 miles an hour. Their pedals are useless. They will have a setting that's called a Class 2 with actual quotes. Class 2 setting limits the device to 20 miles per hour unless you change the switch to the next mode up, which is 35 miles an hour. And they market that device as a Class 2 street legal e-bike. And then the marketing, especially for off-road dirt bikes. A public safety official talked about Christmas. Hundreds of thousands of these devices were sold as Christmas presents. You can buy a 2,000 watt, 35 mile per hour electric dirt bike. The manufacturer promotes it as suitable for children. They show it being used on public streets by children as young as 5 years old. Highly inappropriate. So they are creating this problem. It has, we don't make them, our industry does not make them. Bike Alliance in Minnesota doesn't support them or their users, but they're showing up because of this manufactured behavior. So this bill would also require all of these sellers of these devices to be motor vehicle dealers. They would have to register with the state, they would have to comply with those motor vehicle dealer requirements, and they would actually have to have a physical location in the state of Minnesota in order to sell these devices. You can sell an electric off-road motorcycle at a power sports dealer. That's where it belongs, next to the Kawasaki. Where it doesn't belong is an online store where the manufacturer doesn't tell you what kind of device they're selling. Thank you, that's all I have. I'm certainly willing to take questions. I respect the hour.
Great. Thank you. Questions at this point? Senator Brzezinski.
Getting more and more confused, Mr. Chair. So we looked on Amazon, and there is a e-moto, and there's a moto. E-moto is what is on there. And so they are sold without a dealership license. And so how does that go with this bill? So the Amazon could continue to sell them, but the local dealer that's selling them would now have to be licensed? How does that? It just seems like we're being preferenced to allowing them to be sold by, let's say, an Amazon or online, but then penalizing a local business for having to have a dealership. Is that, or am I misreading this?
Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Chair Dibble and Senator. I think as the bill is written, Amazon would need to register as a motor vehicle dealer if they want to continue to sell and profit from these devices being sold in Minnesota. In fact, the circumstances have grown so severe in New Jersey, they have just banned online sales of e-moto devices altogether for 1 year while they try and sort this out. This is a reasonable requirement. It's no different than Carvana. They sell cars online, but they have to register as a motor vehicle dealer in Minnesota and every state where they do business.
Senator Jasinski.
So I'm not sure that I'll follow up. So if I would go on to Amazon in Minnesota, I couldn't buy one that way, but if I was in Wisconsin or Iowa, I could buy one on Amazon? Would that be what would happen if this bill passed?
And thank you, Chair Dibble and Senator. I think that's unfortunately true. We can only protect Minnesota residents. If that Wisconsin buyer tried to operate that device in Minnesota, they would still run into problems, legality problems that already exist and some that would be created by the bill.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, so Minnesota is there other states that aren't allowed now? Just to me, it would put Minnesota as one of the unique ones of any other state. So in 49 other states, you could buy one, but in Minnesota, you'd log on and you couldn't buy one. Is that what this would do?
Mr. Moore. Thank you, Chair Dibble and Senator. Minnesota should be proud of its leadership in alternative transportation and bicycle laws. Our laws here are among the best in the country. I will say we just had a bill in California. You can look that up, SB 1167. It's a comprehensive bill to address e-moto use, has many of these same provisions, defines the bikes that can be used and registered on road, those that can be registered as off-road devices, which is also required in Minnesota. And then the other ones are essentially banned for use, and they are going to require the sellers to be registered motor vehicle dealers in California if they want to continue to sell there. And that's where many of these businesses and importers are based.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two things. One, pretty brief. You know, the first section on this is a legislative purpose statement. We don't do that in the Senate.
I have an amendment if you want to offer it, Madam Chair.
I would offer it right now,
All right.
and we'll just get it done. Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would offer the A5 amendment.
So Senator Nelson offers the A5 amendment. It is distributed. It's in your packets. It deletes section 1 of the bill. Questions? No? All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. All right. Senator
Mr.
Nelson.
Chair, yeah, my other question is,
The comment here is the
it is more confusing now than when I first came in here, which I thought things were going to be a little bit more clear. But I'm thinking about the discussion that we've just had, and, you know, we regulate things within our state. We don't regulate things in other places. But commerce, you know, comes across state lines in many ways. And so I'm just thinking we are not probably the only legislature that's struggling with all of these new, wonderful transportation, recreational devices. And it makes me wonder, has anyone looked at like the National Council of State Legislators and some of their model policies, or the Council of State Government? I'm just thinking, as someone who's new to the Transportation Committee, that would be really helpful in trying to get a better bead and vision on all of these. And I'm just curious if any of my members who have been here longer than I have looked at those.
Thanks, Senator. I have not looked at CSG or NCSL and kind of their model policies or what other states have done. I don't know if anyone here has. Speak up if you have. Mr. Moore has been at the forefront of setting a lot of model policies around bicycle around the country. The bicycle classification system, you know, the level 1, 2, 3 was a bill that he wrote with me that we passed a few years ago. Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Chair Dibble and Senator. There is electric bicycles are regulated at the federal level. They have safety standards. There are battery safety standards that are expectations by the CPSC. If your e-bike doesn't meet those standards, it can be impounded or forced to be recalled. E-motos, no such standards. There are no standards for an electric dirt bike at the federal level. That's why we're having to work state by state. There is now a federal bill, and the number escapes me, that's been introduced in the House that will require the CPSC to evaluate all these devices, electric bicycles, electric dirt bikes that are under their jurisdiction, and create federal mandatory standards for classification and labeling and safety of those devices and age determination guidelines, so people know which of these devices are safe for them and their children to use.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I will look forward to seeing that. I don't know how far it is out on the horizon, but I think it will provide, hopefully, some much-needed clarity. And, of course, states can always refuse not to conform if we choose not to, but I'd like to see that. So thank you.
Very good. I would like to get to, if we can, I see Mr. Quillis and Mr. Makarios waiting patiently to provide some testimony. So, Senator Jasinski in the meantime.
I think I'll let him testify for. I don't want to delay this anymore.
All right. Great. All right, who would like to go first?
Mr. Chair, there's an A3 amendment that could be discussed at this point, if you'd like.
Oh, A3. It's been distributed. All right. All right, Senator Jasinski, do you want to offer the A3?
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Senator Jasinski offers the A3. Senator Abler?
I'll defer to my testifier.
All right, Mr. Makarios to the A3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. The A3 reflects compromises and negotiations that were worked out with the bill author and over in the other bodies were all adopted as well. I'm Kyle Makarios, represent the Motorcycle Industry Council. We're particularly interested in the provisions in the A3 amendment that are at the very end. This would be lines 2.21 and through the end of it, just to make sure that vehicles are registered and meet electrical safety standards as certified by the manufacturer through the Society of Automotive Engineers in the way that other motor vehicles are certified as safe. So we very supportive of the A3 amendment and think this, if this is adopted, this will be a good bill.
All right. Or what do they say? It's a good amendment. Vote for it. All right.
Mr. Chairman, my name is
Mr.
Tony Quillis. I'm representing ARMCA, which is the Amateur Rider Motorcycles Association. And to echo what Mr. Makarios said, that we had worked with the advocates on this, trying to define, as you've heard throughout the day today, trying to find the definition of e-moto and e-bicycle is a tough way to do it. There's obviously been some movement in California, but not a lot of people have gone through to try and define e-moto. And that's, you touched on that a little bit today, but I think we found some good constructive conversations that Mr. Makarios' organization, my organization, and the other advocates have gone through, and we've, I think, reached a happy place with the A3 amendment.
Thank you. And my question is, have you had a chance to speak with Bike MN and others? I see heads nodding. All right. We're in agreement. Senator Jasinski.
Mr. Chair, and this, maybe I waited the correct time for this, so, and I might need Senator Lang's help here because I know he's a motorcycle guy. But so back when I was younger, they had, I think it was called the YZ150, and it was a dirt bike, but it was also street legal. It did both. It had blinkers on. It looked like a dirt bike, but you could actually ride it on the roads. And that was gas powered, obviously, and now we're converting to electric options, so I get that. So my question is, in the bill and the amendments, so if a version of the old YZ150 or 185, whatever it was, that could actually be driven off-road, but also be street legal, gas-powered, is that going to be the same true now with a e-moto or electric motorcycle, so that it could actually be used off-road or be licensed on-road if it had the blinkers and the license and all those things? So, Senator Lang, am I down the right road on this or not? I'm just, again, if we're going to make laws to allow electric motorcycles, are we allowing them the same opportunity that a gas-powered was when they were that one? It was, again, I think it was a YZ150 or whatever it was, but it was, you could actually use it on both. It looked like a dirt bike, but it had signals on it, had license plates. So are we hampering that, or are we basically making it the same, is my question.
Senator Lang or anyone at the table?
Or anybody, yes.
Yeah.
What you're speaking of is a dual sport motorcycle that is capable of off-road travel, however, is licensed on the road by the Department of Public Safety. The difference between that and like an off-road motorcycle is the fact that that motorcycle is licensed by the DNR as an off-highway motorcycle, OHM. So it is, I don't think that that is addressed by what you guys are talking about, is it?
No change. No change. Senator.
I don't know, that's what I'm asking, sorry. I just want to make sure that we're doing the same. So again, if it would meet those requirements and it's electric, like the old dual sport motorcycle was, are we still on the same page, so it's the same thing is what my question is?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Jasinski, there are some dual registrations where they are street legal, but you are allowed to use them, as Senator Lang said, as off-highway motorcycles. There are some, and I think Mr. Moore can clarify a little bit more on how the impact of the A3 would do those, what I'll call dual registrations.
Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Chair Dibble and Senator Jasinski. This is true. We're not treating electric motorcycles any different than gas. In fact, we're treating them exactly the same. That's the purpose of the bill, to change the existing definitions to incorporate these new electric, powerful electric, fast electric vehicles. So yes, if a electric motorcycle was capable of being registered on the street, it was imported as a street legal device, had a VIN, it could be plated and used on the street, and it may also be capable, due to its equipment, of being used as an OHV, and that's accommodated. Any vehicle that's used off-road is considered an OHV when it's being used off-road. So you could take your, I guess your jacked-up pickup truck with the big wheels and ride that off-road, even though it's not designed as an ATV or UTV. So the answer is yes.
Senator Jasinski.
And so are we creating another class? Why not? Okay, we're not. So it's just anything over 28 miles an hour would qualify as technically being a motorcycle?
Anything
Mr.
over
Moore.
30 miles.
Over 30 miles an hour.
Over 30 miles an hour. Yeah. If it's between 30 and 20, it's a motorized bicycle or moped. If it's over 30, it's a motorcycle. If it's intended for off-road use only, then it's registered with the DNR as a OHV.
Okay, thank you.
I see a roadable aircraft in here, by the way.
Yeah. What is that?
All right, chitty chitty bang bang, right? All right. All right, so, have we voted on the A3? No. All right, any further questions on the A3? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. All right, anything further on Senate File 4186? Senator Abler.
Just closing comments. I appreciate the discussion. And, you know, in Minnesota, we kind of led the way on PFAS, and there's a lot of good things that come out of this, I think. I think it's a good bill. Curiously, this morning, you probably discussed this already, but in today's Tribune, they talked about hospitals raise alarm on e-bike injuries. And so I think I wasn't here for the whole discussion, but I think this is very compatible with that. And I appreciate your attention to it, and Senator Coleman does as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thanks. I'll mention that we got the Nelson chart here passed out to everyone, and it's been posted online as well at the committee site. So read it, put it under your pillow. We're going to have a test on this chart next week.
Mr. Chair, that's just one. We're going to get another one from our friends at DPS as well. This is just from the Eden Prairie, but we also are going to get one. So thank you.
Yeah. All right, thank you. All right, I think the section might have come from Evan Pinko might have sent this one to us. Is there another one on the way too, or is this, yeah?
The law enforcement card is something we're going to want to.
All right, very good. Looking forward to that. All right, you can put it in your wallet and run around and, you know, be super cool at parties when you pull it out and talk about it. All right, with anything further on Senate File 4186. So Senator Jasinski moves Senate File 4186 as amended be recommended to pass, and all right, yeah, so it does have some environmental implications, so it needs to be referred to the Committee on Environment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. So we'll see you all next Monday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members.
Thank you, Senator Abler. Yeah, for our fun deadline week. And so, Senator Jasinski, I'll be talking to you tomorrow about what next week will look like.
Okay, thanks. Just asking about our drivers training Or under what you call it?
Yes.
Driver's training.
Yes, we had a conversation about that today. All right, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.